Welcome to the third season of the Coaching Cast, your working from home managers club. Regardless of where you're working right now, at home, in the office, or a blend of both, or whatever you do as a career, we've got something for you at the Coaching Cast. I'm Susie, sales and business coach at Future You Business Coaching, currently taking on my hardest coaching assignment to date, parenting that toddler who doesn't take too kindly to being questioned.
And I'm Lisa, founder of Grip Corporate Coaching, personal performance coach, leader, and chief eye roller when it comes to all nonsensical corporate mumbo jumbo, which suffocates rather than advocates.
In this podcast, we aim to explore the leadership and coaching techniques required to navigate and survive the current business environment. Presenting different topics each episode, which we will discuss with some very special guests along the way, sharing ideas, hints, and tips for you to take away and try for yourself. We hope you enjoy listening. Today, we're talking about inclusive leadership, what it is, why it's more important than ever, and how you can work on being more inclusive in your own leadership style. So stay with us and enjoy. So before we get into this week's episode, Lisa, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. For anyone who generally watches the Coaching Cast, whether you do that or not, I don't know how many of you do, but you will notice I am in a different location.
Different background behind it. It's very regal, I have to say, that background. It's very like Georgian. There's beautiful bookcase behind you if anybody's listening. Just to describe that background there. Lots of looks like very kind of, serious books. Like
I know.
A bit of...
I haven't checked whether they're real yet, as in whether they are actually books or just show books. I'm assuming they're real.
Show books. I love a show book.
I'm sure they're real books. But yes, I am on tour. I've taken the Coaching Cast out of the house and we are on tour at the moment.
She's on tour. Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm not with her because that would be A, amazing, and B, would mean I'd get to leave my house. So even better.
That would be a lot better if we were on tour together. But no, so I am in London at the moment. So I've taken the Coaching Cast, Lisa's side of the Coaching Cast, out of the Cotswolds, and I am in London having a little cheeky getaway with my husband. So we're really good. So this is the room at the hotel, which is very nice, with my bookcase that I have in the boudoir. So we've had a great time. We've done lots of different things. As I was saying to you, went axe throwing on Saturday for my brother-in-law's birthday.
Highly recommend your brother-in-law, because I know he's a big fan of the Coaching Cast.
He is, yeah, bless him. Him and my dad, top two supporters, probably the biggest fans we have of the Coaching Cast. So yes, it was Scott's birthday last week, so we celebrated his birthday on Saturday. He specified that he wanted to go axe throwing, so we went to this incredible experience. Highly recommend it. So I want to do a shout out to them. It's called Axperience.
Like it.
Yeah, very clever. It's based near the Docklands Light Railway station, the Tower Hill station. So Minories is actually where it is in London. So just on the edge of the city, but highly recommend it. The team there are amazing. They are such a lovely group of people and really helpful, supportive. It's really well done. I was quite nervous about going axe throwing because I am extremely clumsy. And when it comes to any of these sorts of, slightly daredevil activities, as I describe them, all I envisage before I go are all the injuries I'm going to sustain or potentially sustain on others during the activity, because I don't trust myself. So I was a little bit nervous, especially because we went with a group of their friends. So it was my sister, my brother-in-law, my husband and I, and then some of their friends who I don't know massively well. So obviously there's that whole thing of, oh God, I'm going to really shame myself in front of a group of strangers, i.e. one of them may walk away without a toe because of their experience with me. And that's the sort of thing I was worried about. So yeah, such a catastrophizer. I literally was envisaging, it's the start of our little trip in London, our week away or whatever. And at the start of it, one of us loses a limb, so we have to go home early. Is that kind of...
I mean, that sounds kind of like a holiday I would have.
Yeah, quite. Exactly.
Yeah, based on my holiday experiences this year.
But do you know, it was actually really good. It was so fun and actually felt quite safe. And my favourite, although which I didn't think I was going to enjoy at all, they teach you how to do the single arm throw.
Yeah.
Or the double-handed, which I really didn't think I was going to like. I thought I'd be too off balance, but the double-handed, put your both hands around the base of it's only a little axe as well, by the way. I don't know what I had envisages of like these ginormous like Viking, like axe. I'm getting mixed up two different things. Massive like ginormous axe thing like that, you know, Gandalf would throw.
Yeah.
Not the Harry Potter, the Viking that I've got in mind. Anyway, it's this tiny little axe about this big. So not very big at all. And you hold it at the base and you literally just go,
and honestly, wang it over.
Oh, it was so satisfying. I came 5th out of 10 people. I narrowly missed the semi-final, like, you know.
I have to say, if anyone's listening to this and not watching, Lisa is demonstrating her wax. I've just said it.
Axe throwing, yeah.
Axe throwing. You know what that is? It's because I'm looking at my wax melter thing, like, you know, like a candle thing. It's staring at me, so I'm looking at it.
I don't know what I'm thinking of why I keep shouting wax instead of axe.
Anyway, Lisa is demonstrating her axe skill set, her technique here.
I'm actually pretty good
over their head. I have to say, you are like pretty good. But on the subject of axes, last week we were talking about axes because Robin Terry, your dad, was off to buy an axe.
Oh, that's true. He was.
So, did he buy an axe?
No.
Oh.
No, okay. My husband consulted with him around the best instrument to chop his bush down. Yes, that is exactly what I've said. And so instead of an axe, I think Dom recommended he bought some of those ginormous shear things, whatever they're called. You know, like the ginormous scissors.
Yeah, the big scissors.
I don't know what the technical term is for those things. Anyway, so my dad bought one of them to trim his bush.
Okay. So I feel like it's just a lot of axe or wax. Like conversation activities in your family this week.
Yeah, it was all about the axes this week. What about you? How was your week?
Well, I certainly haven't had a week that involves any axes. That's for sure. My week's been okay, actually. Yeah, my house still looks like Travis Perkins is thrown up in it. There's just bits of building materials still everywhere. It's a bit like in upheaval, but it's slowly coming together. So Martin did a brilliant job doing some decorating. I'm actually going to post a little picture of him on Instagram this week of him doing his decorating.
Bless him. Yeah. Do a shout out to Martin. Shout
out to Martin
and his business.
So yeah, he did really well. Great job. So it's all kind of coming together. But this afternoon, my new electric car is being delivered.
Ooh,
yeah,
exciting.
So I'm literally getting into the future and embracing the fact that we all need to be a bit more environmentally aware. So I've gone and got myself an electric car, which I am excited about. So that's coming this afternoon.
Cool.
So I haven't actually had a car for about 3 weeks, which meant my husband's been having to do all the nursery pickup and drop offs because I don't have a car. And I'm not insured on his. So I was like, that's fine. So yeah, that's going to be coming to an end now. I'll be there in my car picking Arthur up. But so that's exciting. I'm looking forward to receiving that this afternoon, plugging it into my new in-house charger. So I've got a new charger as well. So yeah, I hope I can figure out how to do it all.
Exciting. Yeah, I've never driven an electric car before.
They're really good. The only slight difference I found is they're a lot quieter than normal, like fuel-based car.
Like disconcertingly so.
Yeah.
Like trying to cross the road, you're like, whoa, there's a car there.
That's the main thing that's really been happening this week.
Exciting. Well, I look forward to hearing the update in the season finale next week about your electric car. Season finale next week, CBeebies. We are at the end of our 3rd season. I cannot believe it. It's gone so fast this particular season. But on that note, we should probably get on with this episode. Yes, let's get on with it. Episode 9. We're not there. We're not at the end yet.
Let's do it. Today we're discussing the very important topic of inclusive leadership, a subject which is rightly growing in focus and conversation in the world of business and leadership at the moment. But what do we mean by the term inclusive leadership? According to the website Workable Resources, inclusive leadership can be defined as an authentic leadership style that rules out discrimination, bias, and favour based on colour, race, and other protected characteristics, and allows employees to feel valued for their own individual input. Research from Harvard Business Review also shows that this leadership approach directly enhances performance. Teams with inclusive leaders are 70% more likely to report that they are high performing, 20% more likely to say they make high quality decisions, and 29% more likely to behave collaboratively. So, Lisa, building on this research, why do you think having an inclusive leadership approach is important when managing and leading others?
So I couldn't agree more with that quote that you've taken and shared around performance and how inclusive leadership really supports people to perform at their best. And that's because it directly relates to my own experience and really understanding when I perform at my best.
Yeah.
So I think I've touched upon in episodes before around my experience of knowing the difference between when I feel great and when I can perform at the top of my game and the opposite, and what influences the change and the difference between the two. And definitely in my experience, and I think being able to reflect now and look back, I know that the times when I've performed my best have been when I felt really able to be myself and actually been celebrated for it. So my actual distinct qualities and my personality and my skill set, I guess, is all being recognized and supportive and encouraged, if anything. We want more of that. I know definitely when I've struggled in organizations, it's where actually I felt the extreme opposite to that. So the one example I cite quite often, because actually it was so significant at the time, but it's so significant now, and I think the whole story of my career, that time when I was promoted into a team and actually transferred into a completely different part of the business and was suddenly being managed by a different line manager, and joined a management peer group which was quite large actually for a peer group of managers. There were loads of us. It was a bit too top heavy. But I felt so different. And because I tell you what, it's mainly because I was female. I was in a very male dominated team, but I was in I was one of the only females. The other females were very different in their styles to my own, which is not a bad thing by any stretch. But I'm quite an extrovert. They were quite introverted. And it was definitely a time when I was trying to understand how best to adapt my style and engage with those who had a different style to my own. I was quite immature in that at the time and I didn't really have very good understanding of it. But that was definitely where I felt unable to be myself, that I had to tone myself down, that I had to fit and twist and change to better suit all of them. And my line manager just really clashed all the time because we just didn't understand each other. And I got frustrated because I felt like he wasn't even trying, which really got my goat most of the time, because I was just like, you're not even trying to get to know me. You're not even trying to appreciate my point of view. You're not trying to help me to navigate this situation. You're not even trying to adjust it to better suit me. I got really frustrated with him. And I think that's because he didn't recognise, in all fairness, the importance of inclusivity at all. For me, and I think that's probably the point to stress, that inclusiveness, I think, is really important to me, not just to get the best out of me, but because I think it's so important to help others to be their best by encouraging them and drawing out their strengths and getting more of those strengths out. Because like when we're all operating, being able to access our strengths, well, our strengths are the things that we're good at, we enjoy doing. Like, I think it's obvious that that's clearly going to create a better performance overall for not just individuals, but for a company, and an atmosphere and of enjoyment. And I think even more, like, to say, like, even more efficient. Like, if everyone's playing into their strengths, that's obvious. You're going to be getting the best out of everyone. People will be operating at the top of their game. If you keep trying to fit all of us, square pegs into round holes constantly, because you're not aligning people to roles and responsibilities that fit their strengths, well, it's exhausting and it's time wasting, and you're going to just get this air of frustration all the time.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Actually, I had an experience in my corporate career where I was good at things that some of the senior management team weren't so good at, and they were good at things that perhaps I wasn't as strong at. And because I brought a different skill set and a different perspective and perhaps some different experiences, different approaches, I found myself in certain situations feeling alienated because I was different.
Yeah.
In the way that, like I said, the way I would approach things, the way I would problem solve, the things that I would think about. And actually, I found that a lot of the time that wasn't kind of encouraged and celebrated. It was more like used as something I needed to actually kind of push back down, and actually needed to focus on the things they were really good at, the strengths they brought, and try and build my skill in those areas. And so that was then not helping me bring my true authentic self to work, because I couldn't, because it wasn't in an environment where it was encouraged to do so and to be inclusive.
Yeah. So
I can definitely relate to that. And I think there's something there about us all being aware of our own biases and our own kind of understanding around, actually, people are different, both in terms of the way that they approach things, the way they think, the way they might view situations, and also the way they may kind of actually appear as well, because in that situation you just talked about there, you were a woman in a very male dominated environment, so you are different, you're physically different in that situation. And I think we all have unconscious bias, we absolutely all do, and that's actually quite normal, but it's about being aware of what those unconscious biases are and how they can influence then our reactions, our behavior, our decision making, because they absolutely do. And I think when you're a leader of people, I think even more so now, being aware of those biases and thinking about how you then take that awareness and knowledge to modify your approach to lead more inclusively and ensure you create an environment which brings everybody in and allows them to be their true authentic self and bring their whole selves to work, is so important now, because actually you get, like you said, amazing benefits from that. In the story you told there, you felt you really could bring your true self to everything that you did. It's so important.
Absolutely. And then I think this plays into the notion of psychological safety. So we've been talking about inclusivity in respect of appreciating and encouraging people's strengths and I think as well, like the things that they enjoy doing. I mean, every job will require elements of things potentially that you have to do that maybe you don't really enjoy doing, but it's important, it's part of it, and you have to accept that. But I think when that's balanced with you doing things that you do enjoy, that's a lot more palatable. But we've been talking about the strength side of inclusivity and really enabling people to administer those and bring them out and use them regularly. But there's also that element of inclusivity in terms of creating a space that is safe for everyone to operate in, and where they can feel safe to be themselves, but in terms of like sharing their thoughts, their ideas, their feelings. I think that is so important as well. So many organizations, I think, get that wrong, and it's that ongoing challenge of how do we get a better understanding of what people think and their ideas and their feedback, because I think organizations are always striving to have an honest environment, an open environment, especially big organizations where there's so many people, and trying to connect with everyone right down to your more entry level roles, those that are really on the ground in the operation. That is an ongoing daily challenge, because it's just the physicality of there just being so many people, and how do you engage with that many people and be able to speak to them. But being able to actually, I think, first create that foundation of safety where people feel it's okay to say what they think, to share their opinions. That's the first step, but you'll only be able to do that if you're already cultivating a culture that is one of trust, and where there's not any like negative consequence from saying what you think.
Yeah.
And actually where it's encouraged that you share your opinion and you make it very clear there's not going to be a repercussion. Because I think I've definitely worked in organizations where they state that they want to know what people think, but they judge you. So even though they say they're not going to, and that you can be honest and it's okay, I know people that have then voiced what they thought and then had that held against them, to the point where even again it's been brought up in performance reviews, where people have said, oh well, yeah, but do you remember that time they said this? I don't think that was the right behavior. It's kind of, and I'm like, no, that's not the same thing. Their behavior was the right behavior because you encouraged them to share their thoughts, feelings, views, opinions. So actually their behavior is absolutely spot on. What they said you may not have agreed with, but that's not the same thing. And actually, if we're supposed to be cultivating this culture of honesty, inclusivity, one of non-judgment, well, you're contradicting that, and now you're holding it against them in a performance review, which actually has got nothing to do with their annual performance. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not the same thing. They've actually delivered against the metrics that you set out. They've achieved their objectives. Like, I've definitely been in those situations, and that's I think that's what's got to change. If you really want to create an inclusive culture, it's got to be one where you do what you say you're going to do for a start. So you invite people to offer opinion because you truly do want it, and you're prepared for that to be whatever it is, and that you take it without judgment, because people will only offer the truth if they feel that they are safe to do so. And it's so crucial for organizations when they're saying they want to move forwards, they want to continue to evolve and be innovative. You've got to face into all of those opinions, and whether they're good, bad, ugly, it's not about whether you like them or not.
And I think the same can be said if you run a small business or work in a small and medium-sized business as well. If you work with people, you can still create an inclusive working environment. A really good top tip, which I know some quite big organizations use, I think Amazon might use this in their internal meetings. I know it's a brand that not everybody loves, so take it if you want to in terms of a tip. But one thing I think they do to create a more inclusive environment is in meetings when there's perhaps multiple people. So say, for example, it's a team meeting, there's a leader and then their team is there. If they're asking for opinions or views on something, they ask the team to give their input and views first. The leader doesn't give their views till at the end, once everybody has spoken. And that's to create an environment to allow everybody to feel comfortable to give their view, and to do so without judgment and without retaliation, or not then like diluting down what actually they were going to say because they don't know whether it agrees or not with that kind of leader who's in the room. And that's a really good way of starting to cultivate some of this more inclusive leadership approach, around allowing everybody that opportunity to, you know, say what they think, say what they feel, and start to build some of that psychological safety, which Lisa mentioned before. You know, that safety really does underpin a lot of making this approach be live and be successful. So that's a great top tip. I just thought I would share with you there if you're thinking like, how do I actually do this?
It's really interesting, actually. I've not heard that before. And I think it's a great one. I think if you actually open up the discussion without any premeditated view, then you'll get, well, I'd like to hope you'd be encouraged to have a more varied perspective that's not led initially by the, you know, the senior, more like traditionally authoritative figure giving what they think first, and then everyone feel like, well, I better just agree with that because it's not worth it, kind of thing. Yeah, that's really interesting. I've not heard that before.
So thinking then about that kind of leader and thinking about, you know, how we move towards becoming more inclusive if we lead and manage people, what do you think are some of the top qualities of an inclusive leader?
So qualities, I think it's, I mean, I start with this in quite a few things, but I think it's because it's so relevant and I think it's so important. I think you genuinely have to want to create an inclusive culture. And if you're not sure about it and you yourself have your own concerns, or even you yourself as a leader may find that quite uncomfortable because of how you yourself are being managed, like, let's not shy away from that. Like, those of us who've experienced being in the middle management group in an organization, you know, I definitely have always encouraged those of us there to lead by example and, you know, lead in the way in which even we would like to be managed, which is definitely harder to do than it sounds. I get that, because you yourself have to feel safe. You know, at the end of the day, you have a manager, you have a job, none of it's certain for you either. But I think, you know, one of my values is authenticity and it's honesty as well. So to be true to myself, which is what we're talking about, I think, and what we're encouraging people to do, I think you do have to be bold and brave and say that you're going to represent what you want to see more of, whether that's for yourself and for those you lead. But I think you have to genuinely want to do this, because that way everything you do will come from a place of truth. This is not a tick box exercise by any stretch. And I think if you try and make it that way, you'll obliterate it. Because it will come across disingenuous, and already then you're going to be conflicting and be contradictory to what you're trying to achieve, which is like an honest, safe environment. So I think you genuinely have to want to do this, and then I think it's thinking about what is the right way to do that depending on where you are at with your team. Because I think, you know, if you're in the early stages, it's about putting the time and effort in and being patient. So it's about consistent action and knowing that what you're doing is growing this environment. But I think it's straight away, I think one of the most simplest things, you know, you can do is start being curious. Again, one of our favorite buzzwords, but it's so true. And genuinely wanting to seek to understand what people think. So I think that way you're going to be encouraging yourself to ask questions and to open up discussion. And that also means, as a quality, you've got to be a good listener. And if you're not a good listener now, that's fine, because we can always, all of us can practice and grow our listening skills. 100% I have over the last 6-7 years, because I love to chat, as everyone knows. I've had to work really hard to listen as well. So I think that's probably my starting point. I think from a qualities perspective, I think it's being honest. I think it's genuinely wanting to create an environment of inclusivity and to practice at this. You know, like we talked about with growth mindset in the last season, it's just a not yet if you're not there already. but start practicing now and it will be. So I think, having that real desire to want to do it, I'm really thinking about, so what does that require me to do and what do I potentially need to change? Start asking more questions, to be curious, and start really listening, because people really value being listened to. And that is such a gift to people. You've asked them a question, you've asked them what they think, you're bringing them in, that starts that inclusivity bit, and now you're listening to it.
Yeah. And that really takes things to the next level around like effective collaboration. Like that's really important, and you can do that by listening. That's how you create collaboration, by really being present, really understanding, being curious, and listening to what they say. And thinking about, okay, what do I now do with that information that I've listened to? And actually, do I fully understand it? So a great way of checking your understanding is to then summarize back to that person what you've heard, so that you can check your own understanding of what it is you've digested and you've listened to. And it gives them another opportunity, if you've missed anything, for them to make a point again or to add anything additional. So that's a really, really kind of critical step. I like what you said there about that kind of having that visible commitment, I think, to want to do it and to see the value in doing that, and in treating every individual group fairly. I think in the story that I told just a minute ago, I think definitely at times I was perhaps treated unfairly. I'll put that in kind of brackets. I think I was treated unfairly at times because as an individual, I brought some differences to the group, and they were kind of pushed aside. They weren't necessarily recognised and held up as things that would bring value, and because they were different, because they were maybe a bit more unique, and that at times can have felt quite frustrating. And what I mean by that is things like, I had very much a people focused approach to selling. So yes, absolutely, numbers are really important, commercial awareness is really important, being able to look at a P&L, look at your profit and loss, absolutely critical skills. But there's also more than that as well. They are just some of the foundations. And because I brought maybe more than that, or a different approach in how you would do that, sometimes I felt that was kind of pushed aside or undermined or undervalued, because it wasn't the same as what perhaps some of the more senior leaders were operating with as a style and as an approach. So I think that visible commitment to want to do it is so, so important. And that kind of humility, that just kind of desire to want to understand, to adapt to various situations, what you're hearing, and being aware and accepting of, and showing your own vulnerability and having awareness of that. So, having awareness of what some of those biases are that you're perhaps holding, and demonstrating that through vulnerability will really get people on board, and that will really demonstrate to them that you do care and that you are really passionate and actually see the importance around that commitment to being and leading inclusively. Because it's all very well, we can all say these things, but actually on this particular area, I think actions absolutely speak louder than words.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's acknowledging what has been said to you, what's been shared. So that, I think, with the summarising piece that you recommended, which I think is really great, that does give the opportunity to demonstrate I've listened, I've heard you, and then to qualify whether you've heard correctly, and then give the other person the ability to correct it if not. I think then just acknowledging and appreciating what's been said is so important.
Yeah.
And that way that person really feels like it was worthwhile sharing. Even if nothing massively comes off of the back of that, maybe nothing really will change, but at least honouring that person by saying, I've heard you, I appreciate what you've contributed, thank you very much. Because I think in your example there is showing, the time when you very much had a different perspective, a different approach, just to have that continued dismissed, it's just so insulting. And it doesn't really enable you to feel as though you've got any value to bring, which is it's not true. That's not true at all. Fair enough, not everything each of us contributes at times will be relevant to what's happening. We all get that, but there will often be times when that is not the case. So I think feeling as though even in those times when what you're offering isn't what's going to be taken forward, it's still being acknowledged and appreciated is so important. Because otherwise, I think what you find, and I know this is my personal experience, I stopped offering. I just closed down because I felt so dismissed on a regular, consistent basis that actually I became really frustrated and thought, what's the point? But actually, I also did it to protect myself because I started to feel, I did feel that judgment. I didn't feel safe to share. I felt as though I was being belittled with my comments. I felt like my comments weren't worthwhile, and it really impacted my confidence. And I think that's what you've got to be really aware of as a leader. When you're leading a group of people, that is the power you have. You have the power to both uplift and really damage people in that situation. So you have a really big responsibility. And actually, that is the beauty of organisations, small or large, is that you employ a variety of people to then create a very varied approach that is so supportive to a business. It's not just one way, you have multiple ways, but that means you've got to be open to listening to everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I know we're only scratching the surface today on this topic. It is a big topic. There's lots of different areas that sit within it. And I think as we go into our next season, we're going to look at some more specifics in this area to discuss and have a conversation around. But thinking about what we've talked about kind of today, what would be some of your top tips to help our listeners if they're thinking about, okay, I need to boost my inclusive leadership approach at work? I get it. I understand the importance of it. I now need to think about how I do that. What would be some of your top tips?
So I think my top tips would be invite everyone to speak and share. So if you lead a team of 2, 3, 5, 10, however many people, you invite every single one to share. And that means that you are the facilitator in those group situations. If there are people there who are not offering, who are not speaking, you are the person that enables them to speak. So you direct the conversation to them and you create that platform for them to speak, because, those of us who are more introverted still have just as much to say. It's just at times it's about timing and support and creating that safe space for them to be able to do so. Doesn't mean they don't have anything there. So I think that's the first thing I would say, is really inviting all to speak and share. I think it's then that follow-up around demonstrate you've listened by acknowledging what's been said and showing your appreciation that person has said it. Because that's what really enables people to feel valued and will encourage them to continue to contribute, because it feels safe to do so. It feels worthwhile to do so. And regardless of what action is then taken or whether your point is even agreed with, it's not necessarily about agreement. It's still been worthwhile in you doing it because people are glad you've said it. So I think they're definitely my first 2 top tips. And I think what that really builds nicely into, and I have mentioned it already, is that growth mindset piece, which is actually a big part of psychological safety, is enabling people to feel that they're able to share openly and honestly as an adult without consequence. So you can't fail by sharing. And actually, I think if you are cultivating an environment where people are encouraged to try things out and learn from both whether it goes well or not, and you have that growth mindset attitude already being worked on, that really helps with this inclusivity piece.
Yeah. I would have a couple of additions to that in terms of my top tips. I've talked about it already today, which is around having that awareness. So are you aware of your conscious and unconscious biases? Because I've said it before and I'll say it again, we all have them. It's our map of the world. Yeah. And that's fine, but it's about becoming more aware of what those are, so that we can bring that into our decision making, into our leadership approach, into our behaviors and our style, and linked to them being more authentic and more true and more honest, and being comfortable with showing some of that vulnerability as well. So I would really encourage you to think about, are you aware of what those biases are that you have, and do a kind of a little self-reflection exercise to help you do that. And then the other one I would say is, if hold yourself and others accountable for inclusion. So if you see a situation where that isn't being done or being encouraged, then absolutely you need to become more confident and comfortable pointing it out if you aren't seeing it happen, because that is how those qualities and that importance of having and creating an inclusive environment will become more central to the organisation and the way that you operate and the way that you do things. Every other week, we will share a workplace shame, either one of our own or one given to us by you, our CBBs. We want to know your funniest, silliest, most embarrassing work stories or admissions. Perhaps that time you farted loudly in the office in front of your managing director, or the time everyone witnessed you snogging the apprentice, etc., etc. Just send us an email to hello@thecoachingcast.co.uk, or you can message us on Instagram @thecoachingcast. And don't worry, all your stories will remain anonymous. So this week we actually have a listener story.
Excellent.
Which I have read it already, but I have to say it's a really good one. Lisa,
brilliant. I haven't. Before. I'm excited. No.
So here we go. So my colleague at a company I worked for in Nottingham was the sales manager, and he was tasked with carrying out interviews for a new salesperson to join our team. The office was quite old and in dire need of an update. He'd just introduced himself and was partway through the interview when he suddenly felt the cushioned part of his chair give way. He fell through the frame of the chair with his legs up in the air, looking like a turtle stuck on his back, and the poor interviewee had to help him out of the chair. So thank you very much to this CBB who saw this live in action and had to send us this story as a workplace shame. Absolutely.
That's hilarious.
I know. Can you imagine being that person being interviewed? Oh my goodness me. I'd be like, is this a setup? Is this part of the interview? Like how I now respond?
Yeah. How do you react and manage the situation? How did he get out of the chair? Just like,
well, I think the interviewee had to go and help them come out and get out of the chair.
Like lift him.
Yeah.
Lift him
yeah, because he's on his back like a turtle.
Because you'd be wedged. So lift you out. That is absolutely brilliant.
Anyway,
that is so funny.
So thank you very much for that. That's an anonymous CBB. We
thank you,
love
CBB.
Hearing your workplace shames. Please send us more. We love hearing them. Thank you. It's now time for Bullshit Bingo, where we call out phrases which get commonly used in the workplace, which quite frankly make us cringe. Today's Bullshit Bingo came from a LinkedIn follower, and it is setting out our stall. A phrase which we think means getting your intentions and plan out there to achieve something early on. So it's all there, ready to then just go and do. Now, I used this in the episode last week. I said, we need to set our stall out. I actually said this last week. So I can definitely say this is one that I've used.
I worked in a company where this was used all the time. So I must have said it as well. I must have said it, set our stall. I think we often said it in our leadership meetings when we were talking about big engagement initiatives and needing to get people together and being really clear about our intentions and the objective. We had to set the stall out. So yeah, it's funny. I actually think this one on LinkedIn, I think actually came from one of my old managers in that company. And I love the fact that she suggested it. And she's the one, she's saying she hated it. I swear she said it all the time. But I do think that's true of a lot of our bullshit bingos. And like all of us who use them, they become the language, don't they, in the organisation you work for. And then you all start saying it because everyone else is saying it, because it just becomes a habit and you hear it all the time. Yeah. And yeah, definitely this was used in that organisation and everyone used to say it. Setting your stall out.
Setting your stall out. It's a good one.
It is a good one. It is a good one. So yeah, brilliant. Well, people, similar to workplace shame, bullshit bingo, they'll both continue into season 4. We want to hear all of them. We want to hear as many as we can get. We've had some great bullshit bingos in season 3. So we've still got a few brilliant ones to share with you in season 4, but we want you to share with us what yours are. So keep them coming. We haven't got them all out there. There's plenty more. So please keep sharing your bullshit bingos with us. So we're coming to the end of today's episode where we've been discussing the topic of inclusive leadership. Our tips from today for you to try are, number 1, invite everyone to speak and share. You are a facilitator, so really make sure that you are identifying anyone who hasn't spoken and give them the floor so that they can speak and share their opinion. It's often the quietest people that have the best thoughts and ideas. Number 2, demonstrate you have listened by showing your appreciation and acknowledging what has been said. Susie shared the great tip of summarising what they've said. That gives the individual the chance to understand that they've been listened to, and they can also correct if necessary. Number 3 is cultivate an environment where you can't fail by sharing. So we talked about growth mindset in season 2. It's a great episode. Re-listen to it if you wish, so you can just remind yourself of what a growth mindset is. But it really is about ensuring that people feel that if they share anything, it cannot be classified as wrong. They're not going to fail by doing so. That way, they'll share more and more often. And the last point is, are you aware of your conscious and unconscious biases? So be really aware of your thought processes when things are happening. Pick up on any judgments you're having in your head, any bias you may be feeling or even starting to show, and stop yourself. Just check what you're doing and always be aware of those. That one is an ongoing build, I think, for many of us. It's a work in progress. So Susie said early in this episode, this is just us touching the tip of the iceberg of inclusivity, and we will be talking a lot more about inclusivity and very specific areas of that in season 4. So don't worry if you can't remember all those top tips I just shared. We will share these on our Instagram account later this week. That's where all of our tips are shown. So there are all of our historical top tips on our grid on Instagram. You just need to look for @thecoachingcast to find them. So as well as those top tips, we also have our questions. So ask yourself the very direct question of, are you treating every individual and group fairly at work? If the answer is no, really be honest with yourself about what is going on there and why that is the case, and start thinking about how you can actually do differently. So number 2 is, how can you understand and value the uniqueness of individuals to include them as much as possible at work? And then your third and final question is, what is your plan to show up as a more inclusive leader? So what actions can you take away and start putting in place straight away now?
We hope you've enjoyed today's episode and have some new ideas to take away and try it for yourselves. If you have any questions, thoughts, or feedback, we honestly love hearing from you.
Yes.
So please contact us at hello@thecoachingcast.co.uk or on Instagram @thecoachingcast. We honestly love hearing your thoughts, views, feedback, and it also helps us be better. So we are currently developing season 4. So please let us know if there's any topics you would like us to cover in season 4.
Your support means everything. Therefore, if you like what you've heard, then give us a follow on Instagram @thecoachingcast. Leave us a review on Apple and Google Podcasts. And most importantly, subscribe to future episodes wherever you listen. And don't forget, you can also watch our episodes. You can see these lovely faces of ours and all the strange gesticulations and demonstrations that we do.
And Lisa's axe throwing.
My axe throwing techniques.
Yeah.
on YouTube just by searching The Coaching Cast. So our next episode is going to be the season 3 finale, which is crazy. So our season 3 finale will be a week today. I can't believe that it's there. I can't believe the time has already flown. So it's scary. So we will be looking back on all of our favourite bits from this 3rd season with some special help from you, our CBBs.
We both love music and use it to motivate and energize us. So we like to finish each episode of the Coaching Cast with our personal song recommendation, giving you positivity and energy as you launch into your next team, Zoom, or face-to-face meeting. It's my choice this week, and I've chosen This Is Me by Kiala Settle and the Greatest Showman Ensemble. I hope I said that right.
I think you did. I think you nailed it.
Didn't. Thank you all, CBBs, so much for listening. Have a great week. And remember, you've definitely got this.